Welcome to Trial Site News Podcast Series. Today we have the honor of speaking with Dr. Taglietti. Dr. Taglietti is the President, Chief Executive Officer, and Director of SCYNEXIS, Inc., as well as Director of various public companies and nonprofit organizations. So, Doctor, welcome.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and it's really my pleasure to be here today with you.
We're excited to have you. We know you're a busy man, and we're thrilled that you took the time to come speak with us today. Let's deep dive right into this. Now, we here at Trial Site News, we are curious in your career trajectory as you went from Vice President to President Forest Research, another prominent pharma company at the time. How did the responsibilities change, and how did it prepare you to become CEO?
Well, building a career in the pharma industry is really something you do step by step. Everything for me started when I came to the U.S. to join Schering-Plough, where I was the Vice President of Clinical Development. And that gave me a great foundation on how to develop products. And I'm proud to say that we had quite a few successes when I was at Schering-Plough. And then moving to a company later on, like Forest, where I joined as the president in charge of research and development, helped me really to have a much broader view of the world of pharma. So I was involved not just with clinical development, but with all aspects of drug development, from manufacturing to preclinical, regulatory, post-marketing, pharmacovigilance. And that created really the foundation, since I was also an officer at Forest, to better understand the financing aspects of our business, which are not a small part of our business, especially if you go to a biotech. So for me, it was exciting when I became the CEO of SCYNEXIS to put to good use everything I have learned during my years at Schering-Plough and at Forest. And of course, there is always something to learn. And being a CEO in the last 5 years has been a tremendous experience for me in terms of personal development.
So let's then shift to SCYNEXIS. Now, Doctor, can you tell us about the business history of the company? We know it was founded a couple of decades ago and is pioneering a new class of antifungal and anti-infection medications to help millions of patients worldwide in need of new options to overcome and prevent difficult to treat and drug-resistant infections. Could you share more with the Trial Site Network about the company background?
Oh, the story and the background of SCYNEXIS is fascinating. Actually, the company was created in 2000 as a manufacturing company. So the company was manufacturing pharmaceutical products, actually for third parties. And the specialty, really the strength of the company was synthetic chemistry. Actually, this is the word SCY of SCYNEXIS came out, synthetic chemistry. And as part of this work, they were developing different kind of compounds. And around 2013, 2014, they found that they had this compound, which is now we call Ibrexafungerp, which had the potential really to treat fungal infection, and especially multi-drug resistant fungal infection difficult to treat, resistant to other products. But the company was a manufacturing company. So this is where I got involved. They asked me if I could join the board as independent director in 2014 to help the company to become a biotech company and to start the development of the product, the clinical development of the product. The product was in phase 1, and I was very excited to join SCYNEXIS because when I saw the profile of the drug, and again was in early development, the attributes of the drug were exciting. An oral drug with a novel mechanism of action. And so I joined the board very excited in 2014. And in 2015, actually, the board asked me if I was interested in managing the company as a CEO. So I became the CEO and president in charge of the company.
Wow.
I made some changes, restructuring the company. I sold the manufacturing business. I focused the company on biotech because what we want to develop is really a novel antifungal product that can be used in treating difficult infections due to fungi.
So what about COVID-19? How did that impact the business model and trials?
That's very interesting. First of all, as you may know, I'm an infectious disease specialist. So COVID-19 is something I've been following also very, very closely. And it's interesting. There are two aspects of the COVID-19 pandemics that I would like to talk in relationship to SCYNEXIS. The first one is that the COVID-19 pandemic has been a powerful and painful reminder that infectious diseases will continue to be a problem. I do believe that we as a humankind, we will be able to find treatment for Alzheimer's, Parkinson, cancer, but infectious diseases will always be with us because pathogen, they will be here billions of years after us. So the battle with infectious disease is a never-ending warfare where we come with new tools and the pathogen, they will find a way to become resistant to our new weapons. So that is what the pandemic has been causing a new interest in infectious diseases. The second aspect, of course, is the disruption of the business. That is something that COVID-19 has been, in many cases that we have seen, the economy around the world has been really crashing. However, our company has been doing very, very well. We are in a development stage. We have been able to move ahead our program successfully. In fact, actually, this year has been a great year for us. We were able to finish the phase 3, which is the last stage of development. So we are getting ready now to file a new drug application for our product this year, and we expect approval of our product, and so to be able to bring our product to the patients mid of the next year. So COVID has been a terrible, terrible event for the world, and again has reminded us that we should continue to invest in anti-infectives, and our company, of course, is well positioned to bring something new to the market.
So speaking of, can you share with us why Ibrexafungerp, A, works, and B, would be superior to existing approaches?
That's a great question, Adrian. First of all, let me make one step back. Systemic antifungals, in other words, antifungals that can be given orally or intravenously, there are very few of them. In the last 60 years, there has been only 8 or 9 antifungals coming to the market. So there is simply no innovation. In fact, last time that a new class of antifungals was introduced was more than 20 years ago. 20 years ago. And some of the antifungals we still use today were introduced 60 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So our product is a new class. That alone shows the innovation that we are bringing to the market. It's a new product of a new class. The product kills the fungi very effectively, and at the same time is well tolerated by the human body. So we have a large evidence now that our product is effective in killing the fungi, and at the same time is safe and well tolerated in clinical trials. So we are planning now to submit a new drug application based on this data. Why the drug will provide an advantage compared to what is available today? First of all, is a new oral class, and that is an important attribute to be available orally, because there are so few antifungals. There are only 4 antifungals that are available orally, and some of them have been approved more than 25 years ago. Second, our product goes in the tissues at high concentration, and therefore it treats the infection where you have a fungi. And third, which is also a very important attribute, it has a very, very good safety profile. It does not cause drug-drug interactions. It has been shown to be well tolerated in clinical trials, and therefore the combination of activity and the Ibrexafungerp has a broad spectrum, so it is effective against many different kinds of pathogens. pathogens is a profile that we expect will be significantly beneficial to patients.
Now, you mentioned how there's so little innovation over the past decades. Why is antifungal medication innovation lacking, do you think?
Well, it's actually because it's very difficult. It's very difficult, or let's put it in this way: it's not easy to find targets in that you can follow and to treat a fungal infection. The reason is because the metabolic machinery of the fungi is very similar to the metabolic machinery of the human cells. So if you try to kill a fungi, well, you may risk to kill also the human cells. And this is why it has been very, very difficult to find targets in the fungal cells that you can go after. For example, for bacteria are so different from human cells. The bacterial cell is so different from the human cells that there are many, many different ways you can go after a bacteria, but not for a fungi. Our product, for example, targets a structure that exists only in fungal cells. And this is why our product has a very, very low risk of what's so-called off-target effects that may be damaging the human cells. We are targeting the hard shell. Fungi are surrounded by a hard shell that protects the fungi. You think about like the shell of an egg that protects the chick developing inside. What our product does is to break down this hard shell around the fungi, and the fungi dies. And we have actually wonderful electronic microscopic picture really showing how these fungi, when exposed to our drug, they become just a glob of material and dead body. What I call truly a mushroom omelette.
That's fantastic. So could you then expand on fungal threats? What do health systems need to be on the lookout for? And what drugs are you developing that can address some of these deadly microbes? Could you expand more on that?
Absolutely. So fungal infections is actually a fascinating area with regards to the type of diseases, because there are three major buckets of infections. Let's start with the one that is very common, but is not really a big issue, and it's fungal skin infection. For example, the toenail fungal infection, or the athlete's foot, or, for example, ringworms, which is a fungal infection of the hair or of the skin. These are minor ailments still due to fungi, but a lot of treatments are available. Then you have a second bucket of infection that are infection of the mucosa, like, for example, thrush, which is a candida infection of the mucosa of the mouth or of the esophagus, or what we are treating today, and for which we are preparing our new drug application, vaginal yeast. In other words, a fungal infections of the vaginal space. And this is an infection that affects millions of women, and unfortunately there are just not enough treatments. And then you have the third bucket of infection, which are the most dangerous one, is when the fungi is able to get inside the body. So you have infection of the bloodstream, infection of the kidney, of the liver, of the brain. These infections, they have very high mortality. We are talking 20 to 50% mortality, and sometimes even higher. And the reason is because the fungi are able to get inside of the body of the patient because the immunosystem of the patient has become weak. For example, cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy, bone marrow transplanted patients, and so the fungi can penetrate inside the body, spread in the blood, go into internal organs, and of course these patients that are very frail to start with, unfortunately, the fungal infection is sometimes the tipping factor that causes their death. And on top of all these fungi, over time, are developing resistance to the currently available treatment. So being an internal infection or an infection of the vaginal space or an infection of the skin, still the problem is that fungi are becoming resistant to our treatment. And since there is so little innovation, so few new classes, what happens is that we just don't have new tools that can fight these infections. And there are examples of recent example of fungal infection that can be frightening. And as an infectious disease specialist, I consider more frightening even than COVID.
Now, we know that you had a successful NDA meeting recently for Ibrexafungerp for the treatment of VVC, the common fungal infection, affecting millions of women each year in the US. Can you explain more to our audience as to what the pre-NDA meeting is and how it will benefit the company in its ultimate goal of a successful new drug application?
Yes. Let me make a long story very short. It takes, when you have a drug to develop, you meet with the FDA at the beginning of the program,
yes,
and you develop a full program together with FDA. So you agree, you reach an agreement with FDA of what needs to get done in order to get the drug approved. Then you go to work. You do your phase 1, your phase 2, your phase 3, which is the last stage of development. You do your manufacturing. You do your toxicology study. Then you have all the body of evidence to show that your drug can be used successfully in treating a specific condition. At that point, you want to file a new drug application. However, before you file the new drug application, you have a meeting with FDA in which you bring all a summary of your body of evidence of the efficacy and safety of a drug, and that is at pre-NDA meetings, and you show all this to FDA, asking a very simple question to FDA. Is this evidence adequate for you to assess the product and to take a decision about the drug? Doesn't mean that FDA is saying that will approve or not approve a drug. They are just going to say, yes, this is adequate body of evidence for FDA to take a decision. So at the pre-NDA meeting, you reach an agreement with FDA that all the information you're going to provide is adequate for FDA deciding if a drug should be approved for the indication that you are pursuing. And after the pre-NDA meeting, you start to finalize your NDA, and you go to the next step, which is filing the NDA and then the review of NDA by the agency.
Now, from our understanding, the recent FDA meeting was based on data from the recent positive top-line results from your phase 3 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, multi-center studies called VANISH 303 and VANISH 306, investigating the safety and efficacy of oral Ibrexafungerp. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is, the pre-NDA meeting, of course, actually collected the work of the last 5-6 years on every aspect of the drug development. But let's say the key jewel, the crown jewel of that package is really the 2 phase 3 studies where we tested our product. And our product, actually, we are very proud of our product. It's a one-day treatment for this type of infection, so it's a single one-day treatment.
Wow.
We tested our one-day treatment versus placebo in a large group of women in our 2 studies, VANISH 303 and VANISH 306, and we showed a clinically meaningful difference with a highly statistical significant difference that we should allow us to really demonstrate the efficacy of the drug. And of course, we have at this point also a large safety database with patients that have been exposed to Ibrexafungerp, again, providing evidence that the drug can be given safely to patients to treat this condition.
Now let's shift gears here a bit. I want to talk to you about your CANDLE study, which is in its phase 3, investigating Ibrexafungerp for the prevention of reoccurring VVC, for which there is no approved therapy in the U.S. Could you expand further on that?
Absolutely. It's a very important indication, actually, for us. because, as you mentioned, preventing the recurrence of vaginal yeast infections is an area where nothing is approved. And unfortunately, for many women, this become a chronic problem. In other words, there is a group of women where vulvovaginal candidiasis is not just a sporadic episode, a sporadic infection. Unfortunately, it's an infection that continues to recur, sometimes multiple times during the year, causing, as you can imagine, distress, impact, even on the mental health of the person because of the stress, losing work, having an impact on relationships. And so for these women, unfortunately, nothing is approved. So we have discussed with the FDA what kind of program can we design and can we execute that will show that Ibrexafungerp can prevent the recurrence. So we designed CANDLE together with the FDA, and we started the study last year, and we expect to have results for this study next year in 2021, following with a supplemental NDA and having the product approved specifically for recurrent VVC in 2022. So as you can imagine, we are very excited that in 2021 we expect approval for the treatment of VVC, and in 2022 we expect approval for the prevention of VVC. So these are two important milestones for us as a company. And of course, it's a pleasure also as a doctor to know that we are bringing a product to women that have been looking for something in the last several decades to treat their condition.
Well, it certainly must be a satisfying place to be where you know that you're helping people with your work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
So when do you anticipate an NDA submission for this indication?
So as I mentioned, it is the first submission will be fourth quarter of this year, so in the next few months, for the treatment of VVC. Our product is a priority review, fast-track type of product, considered a fast-track product by FDA. So we expect a 6 months review that should allow the product to be approved in the mid of 2021 with a launch and in the second half of 2021. And the second indication will be for recurrent VVC, as I mentioned, will be the filing end of 2021 with a potential approval in 2022.
Now, can you tell us about the treatment of VVC NDA submission H2 2020 and VVC approval H1 2021?
So actually, that is an important point that we have been an R&D organization for the last few years. Now we are really at a transition point. We are becoming now what is called a fully integrated company with both R&D and commercial infrastructure. So we are with an approval that will be in mid of 2021, so give or take, expect about 1 year from now, we will be ready to launch. We expect to be ready to launch, and therefore, right now we are going through an important transition in which we are adding commercial infrastructures to our organization. So we will be ready to distribute and to provide this drug to the women who will need it.
Fantastic. So let's shift gears then, and let's talk about some basic business and financial discussions. Now, we've noticed in your latest investor presentation, different analysts have ranges for the stock from $4 to $8 per share. And we've also noticed that you have quite a few large institutional holders. Could you share with the Trial Site Network what has to come together for that stock price to go up?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, the important point is to have strong investors, and this is something that we also are very proud of. We have investors that have been with us for the last several years, believing in what we are doing, confident in what we are doing, and really trusting that we will get this product launched successfully. So this is what we've been executing in the last few years. Our analysts actually now expect our share price to go up significantly when we will complete the filing and when we will launch the product. Also because we have not only this near-term major milestone, which is filing the NDA and getting the product launch in vulvovaginal candidiasis, but I would like to remind to your audience that we are also developing this product for hospital infections. And we have a major program in refractory invasive fungal infection. These also are in internal infection, in immunocompromised subjects, and infections that are not responding to currently available treatments. So this is a salvage setting for patients who have nothing left in terms of other options. We have been actually able to show a couple of interim analyses of these patients and showing a successful results and the clinical benefits in actually more than 80% of them. We have also another study, which is, I think, a very interesting study, and also a study that our investors are following very closely because they believe can bring additional value to our corporation, which is a study versus Candida auris. I mentioned briefly to one of your previous questions that there is a new pathogen that is spreading across the world. It's called Candida auris, and this fungi is multi-drug resistant. Is resistant to most of the antifungal treatments currently available. And when patients get an internal infection with Candida auris, mortality has been up to 60%, 60. In fact, CDC has been including Candida auris among urgent threats. And I think the interest about Candida auris has been growing again because now many more people with COVID-19 are becoming epidemiologists and everyone is becoming an epidemiologist, infectious disease specialist. And the story of Candida auris is not dissimilar to other kind of infections. It was identified in 2009 in Japan for the first time, has been spreading across the world slowly. It's a fungal infection don't spread at the same speed of viral infection like COVID, but has been spreading slowly. Arrived in the U.S. in 2013, 2014, has been spreading across all the states. Now, every single state in the United States had some infection due to Candida auris, and as I mentioned, is an infection that when internally can kill up to 60% of the patients. It's a frightening infection. In addition, again, like it happens also with COVID, is a pathogen that can stick to the garments, can stick on the wall, can stick on the objects, and therefore can be spread around. And like COVID, you may have subjects that are asymptomatic, but they have the Candida auris on their skin, and they shed the fungi around. So it's interesting how the interest for Candida auris has been growing because the sensitivity that COVID-19 has created in terms of understanding the impact that pandemics can have. So Candida auris, we have a study. We have treated successfully some patients, and we reported our success to scientific conferences of our drug against Candida auris.
That's fantastic. We're wishing you all the best of luck with that.
We hope so too.
So let's talk about then your top 3 risks and how will you mitigate them?
Well, top 3 risks. Risk number 1 at this point of the now that the clinical trial is done, and clinical trial, of course, sometimes is the biggest risk of all, but now it's done, it's successful, that risk is over. The other risk is manufacturing. Manufacturing of a product is always a risk in our business because you have basically a specific company or place or plant where you are manufacturing your product. What happens if there is a pandemic? What happens if your company is in Beirut, where there is a big explosion and the plant is destroyed? So how do you manage that risk? Well, you need to have multiple sites in multiple places manufacturing your drug. So in order to make sure that you can manufacture the product no matter what happens to one of your plants. So that is the one risk, important risk, manufacturing. Second risk for a biotech company is financing. Of course, we rely on investors coming and putting money in our company with the hope to make a return. What happens if the financing system crashes? What happens if we are in 2007, 2008, when there was the big bubble, or in 2000 when the dot-com bubble happened? That can make it very, very difficult for a company, a biotech company, to survive. How do you mitigate that risk? Well, you should have adequate runway and, at least a good 12 months runway that allows you to manage also moments, some of the storms that you can have along the way. And this is what we have. We have a good 12 months runway. So these are the type of risks that you need always to be sensitive about.
Now, Doctor, you have a wealth of experience and knowledge. For those scientists and researchers that want to start a drug development company, do you have any words of advice for them?
First of all, it's one of the most exciting things to develop new drugs. So if anyone is listening here, I just tell you, if you have a product or an idea you think it will work, go for it, because there is nothing more exciting than developing a drug and bringing the drug to the patients. I always say that the joy of getting a drug approved for me is second only to the birth of my own children. It's a great moment. So what are some of the advice I will give? Number one, you have to believe in your product. You have to believe, and should not be a blind faith, should be a belief based in hard data. So listen to your product, give your product, and try to see where it will work better. Listen to the patients taking the product and try to understand how they are going to use the product. So believe in the product, listen to the product. So that is my very first advice. Second is find investors who believe in your product, who believe in your story, investors that are ready to ride with you in the roller coaster experience, which is drug development, because drug development is a roller coaster. But as we say in Italy, roller coasters, if you are in good company, can be a lot of fun. And that is what I'm saying. Find good investors that will stay on the roller coaster with you. And the third one, find good people, a good team around you that also will be happy to enjoy the roller coaster ride to develop your product. So that is really magnifies. Believe in your product, find good investors that believe also in your story, and find a good team. When you have these three components, I tell you the chance of success is very high, and you will never regret. You will be happy to do it, and you will never regret that you tried it.
Wise words of advice. Now, Doctor, before I let you go today, any parting thoughts for our audience?
Well, let me, one very simple thing is this, it is success calls success. So one thing that I will tell to the audience here is never be, discouraged by, bumps along the way, failures. We at SCYNEXIS, we had our bumps, and we overcame there. And now, 5 years after I became the CEO, now we are getting ready to get our product filed and approved and bring to the patient something that we do believe will make a difference in the life of the patients. So my departing thought is that at the end, everything should be patient-centered, should be about bringing something that will make you proud of what you have done with your team and will make you really feeling that you have made a difference really for the life of a patient and therefore for the world in which we live. Thank you,
Doctor,
Adam.
thank you. Well, Dr. Taglietti, thank you so much for taking the time with us to be here today. We appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you to the audience here. It was my great pleasure really to share my story, the story of our company, and the story of our product. Thank you.
Thank you.